And hello, good morning, good afternoon, evening, whatever it happens to be, wherever you happen to be. I happen to be here. Here is California, the wet and rainy San Francisco Bay Area, and it looks to stay that way for several weeks, at least for a while, much to the sadness of Johnny the dog. Mein lieber Sorgenhund, who is, as always, just very sad about rain. He does not like rain. He doesn't like the sound of it. He doesn't like the feel of it. He still has to go outside because he's a dog, and that's where he goes. and so whenever he scratches to go out and I open the door, he lingers in the doorway for a couple of minutes, just staring out balefully at the rain, and then he goes out in the rain. And then when he's finished, he stands there in the rain looking around with the saddest Eeyore-ish, you know, stuck in the back of the pasture look you've ever seen. And I have to actually call him back in. And otherwise, he just kind of freezes up and stands there in the rain looking pathetic. So that's what's going on around here primarily at the moment is rain. What else is going on? We are in all kinds of disarray as usual, having just been through the holidays, having just moved my dad, at least temporarily, we'll see. Because unfortunately, he decided to move into a what do you call it, assisted living, a senior place where he would theoretically have more company than he would have living alone in his house, even though he knows many of his neighbors and stuff like that. But that was the idea, and we moved him in right after, in between Christmas and New Year's, and the first thing that happened was they had a COVID lockdown, which they're still in. So, of course, the poor man is stuck in his room. Well, he can get out a little bit, but I mean, the dining room is closed. People are not socializing like normal, and he's already going, maybe I should move back home again. And, of course, those of us who just finished moving all his heavy furniture, and my poor brothers who arranged the truck rental and all that, were all kind of going, oh, give it a chance, Dad, just a little bit. Theoretically, that the lockdown could be over in a couple days, so I hope he gets a chance to find it a more, what's the word I'm looking for, a more convivial environment. As for me, I am working on sending out chunks of the manuscript to my first readers. I've sent out the first two of 5 or 6 chunks. I'm just working on finishing up the third one. So the book is proceeding, Navigator's Children, and I'm waiting to get more feedback from those preliminary readers, which, as I explained before, are necessary because, well, first of all, because this book is so ridiculously complicated that I need just people looking at it for the first time, since I've been living in it for off and on for 2 or 3 years, but also because a lot of the material, the mytho-poetic material of Ostenard is a blur to me because of all the intervening projects over the years. So I also rely on my good friends who help me out with this stuff to tell me, you can't do that, or, well, you better explain why that goes in direct contravention of something you've already said, and stuff like that. So anyway, for those who are asking, and I see somebody in the list here in the chat has already said, when's the next book coming out? Yes, Penny, I hear you. The answer is I'm not sure yet because I've got to get it delivered to the publisher. So it's still a ways away. It's not going to be out whenever it's currently supposed to be out. We had just too many things happened, including obviously COVID and stuff like that had a massive effect on how the books got written, when the books got written, not so much where the books got written because I haven't got out much, but definitely on the process of getting the books ready. I think I mentioned to you guys I had to actually stop and split the book up, and then before I went back to the final part of the last book, which is what's going to be the Navigator's Children, I had to write, or didn't have to, but it seemed appropriate to write Brothers of the Wind in between, and various other things that have kind of, not to mention all kinds of other weird domestic stuff, continuous travails with house and home and all that stuff. Anyway, so what else? So as you can see, Lily the cat, oops, there she is. Lily the cat is not worrying. Lily the cat has her nice, warm, dry office room, and she's perfectly happy. Johnny the dog is miserable. Walter the dog, the Chihuahua, is crazy, as usual. He's just. I was talking about it the other day with Deborah, and my thesis statement is that we have given our pets and our children the space to be whom they really are, and that's a good thing, I think. But the result, of course, is highly neurotic. Not the children so much. Children are in pretty good shape, but the highly neurotic pets. And just as Johnny has found that he can now, he's allowed to be as miserable, sad, and Eeyorish as he wants to be. Walter is a little Napoleon, a little 4.5, 5-pound Napoleon who runs around trying to make everybody do what he wants. And he doesn't even know what he wants. He's getting older, and he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer anymore. But he's always got plans, and you can hear him all over the house going tick, 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 as he runs back and forth, surveying things and making sure things are the way they're supposed to be. And then periodically jumping up on me and letting me know that I'm supposed to be doing something for him, which is largely in his mind. He goes out for an evening constitution at about 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. And after that, they get a treat. And they have misunderstood the whole concept of the treat is not the point. The treat is just something that I give you guys originally to get you guys, okay, let's go out. And it's a thing. And we do it every night. And so Walter, of course, now starting about 8 o'clock at night, starts to militate to be taken outside and then given some biscuits. And he has, God bless him, he has the most ridiculously painful bark you've ever heard. And that's what he does when he gets frustrated that he is not getting his Napoleonic way. So between letting dogs in and out and drying off dogs and being barked at all hours when I'm trying to do something else, or Deb and I are trying to watch a program or whatever, and he's just, tonight I just picked Walter up. He's very small. I just picked Walter up, took him in, put him in our son's room and said, he's yours, and just closed the door. Technically, he's not his, but I just was so tired of the little monstrosity, and we were trying to watch a program on something about physics, I think it was at the time. Yeah, it was a Brian Greene thing about physics. And, so it's complicated stuff anyway, and we're neither of us mathematicians or scientists or cosmologists. We're just interested. And, while you're trying to watch that and they're explaining the difference between the old model of the Big Bang and the current model of universal expansion and the idea of what, with the limits of the observable universe versus, and then meanwhile, every 20 seconds, there's something down on the floor going, it's just maddening. Anyway, so here I'm already wasting all my time and zipping along, but I am going to be reading in just a moment. So let me just say hello to everybody who's here now that I have explained what's going on our end of things. Kristen is the first one, and hello, Kristen. Good to see you. Anna, good morning. Watching from the back seat of the car with my son Michael. I hope you're not driving from the back seat of the car, but I'm glad you're watching. I guess. I hope it's safe. Anyway, Mark, good morning. Good to see you. Chris, good morning, and Happy New Year to you too. Ronnie, good morning and Happy New Year. Thank you, Mark. Yes, it's one of my Beatles shirts. As I think I explained last week or something, there was a tradition for years. Like, nobody knew what to get Dad once I became Dad. And people realized early on they could get me T-shirts. And my parents did it, and my kids did it, and occasionally my wife does it. So as a result, I've got zillions of T-shirts, and many of them are rock and roll based because, that's the kind of thing that works for me. That or comic book stuff or just weird stuff. So yeah, so I have quite a few Beatles t-shirts. I have a few The Who t-shirts and some others as well. Anyway, so but thank you. Then we do. Okay, Christy, hello, good morning. Yes, I'm glad to be back. Ilva, hello, dear. Hello, hello. Happy New Year to see you too. Yes, I am well. We're all well so far, anyway. But and I hope you're doing better, and we miss you. Just sending love. Debbie, good morning. Good to see the T-shirt. Yes, yes, yes. Well, you know I'm an Anglophile. I lived there for a while. My wife's English. I grew up on English stuff. The Beatles, Monty Python. You know all the usual suspects. The Goonies, the Kinks, Damon Albarn. You name it. You know, I'm just an Anglophile. That was how I was accidentally raised, I guess. Nobody set out to make me an Anglophile, but between reading P.G. Wodehouse when I was young and, you know, John Mortimer's Rumpole books and other things and Agatha Christie mysteries and all that, by the time I was a semi-grown up, I was already quite deeply entangled in Britanniana, for lack of a better term. Anyway, so Happy New Year. Good to see you. All right. Yes, and there's Penny. Good morning, Penny. And I already said what was going on with Navigator's children. Nicole. Hello, good morning, evening, and Happy New Year to you. Wouter. Hello, hello. Yes, it's good to be back. Sorry to hear about the rough start. It was a rough last year, so I'm not even sure what you're talking about. And I spend a lot of time miserating on these reading broadcasts. So mostly in an effort to, share a little bit of my glamorous life with my readers and friends. And also just because, you know, it's one of those things where when stuff is bad, you kind of have to laugh. You know, I mean, you kind of have to laugh. I can't tell you how many times we laughed at my mom's funeral. You know, there were quite a few, and she would have too, because that's the way our family is, you know. So usually when you see me talking about these things, you're not necessarily getting the whole picture for how pissed off or miserable or whatever I am. Because, you know, like I said, you got to laugh. That's the way you get through life. That's always been our philosophy. Isaac, good morning, good morning. Your cat hates the rain too. I understand. Well, sensible. It's sensible. Cats do. And Johnny hates everything about the rain. He hates the sound of it. He hates the smell of it. I don't know what it is with him. He's either just a chemically nervous dog, or he had some horrible thing that traumatized him when he was young. You know, maybe an earthquake in the middle of a thunderstorm, and then a pantry door flying open and all the produce and cans and boxes falling out on him. I don't know. He's got all these complexes. Anyway, so I wish Dante the best. Hazel. Hello, sweetie. That's my mother-in-law. Good morning. Good morning. We're doing fine, Hazel. We're doing fine. We're bitching and moaning about various things, but actually we're doing okay. And your daughter was doing pretty good too when I last spoke to her before she conked out as we were watching a program tonight, which is kind of what she likes to do. She likes to get comfortable and we watch something, and then at a certain point I say, Deb, are you still with me, honey? And she's like, take my glasses. Hands me her glasses. I put them off to one side and she slides quietly off to dreamland. Anyway, but no, we're all doing okay. We hope you are too, and we send our love. Sandra, good morning. And Happy New Year. Oh, planning a trip to Southwest England. Excellent. Is that like Cornwall, that far southwest? Wales? I mean, they're not technically England. I mean, they're Britain, but they're not England. So maybe you're talking about like Devon? I don't know. Anyway, wherever it is, I'm sure you'll have a good time. There's some very lovely places there and a lot of very cool people. Petra, hello, and good morning from you and Christina. Excellent. Excellent. Good plan. Breakfast is always a good plan. They used to say it was the most important meal of the day. That has now come under some scientific refutation, but it's still very important. And not to mention satisfying and fun if you have good breakfast food. Good morning, Holger. Good to see you. And yes, we're doing okay. We have water, we have power. I mean, what more could you ask for in the modern world? I am so done with complaining about anything less than the basics. I'm just happy to have the basics. Peter, hello, good morning. Good to see you. That's my friend Peter from the Netherlands, who I have known now for 20-something years. Good to see you, Peter. And, Isaac, I am so sorry to hear that. My deep sympathies. Anyway, I won't repeat that because it's in the chat if you want to see it. So, but I'm very, very sorry to hear it, Isaac. Iris, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you. Winter, hello. Not hanging around. Oh, no. Anyway, of course not. And I'm not waving drowning, as the old Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith? Anyway, yes, the poet. I've got the name right. I'm the one who wrote about the cat who gallops around doing good. Anyway, it'll come back to me. My brain is a little fuzzy, but actually I'm sitting here jabbering when I should be getting forward to reading. And Holger checks in to say hello to all the other people. And Claudia, hello. Claudia is checking in with us from New Zealand. Wouter, as you can see, you worried too early because Lily does not stay awake for very long. Pop, gone. Did I say, Claudia informs me, I said Goonies. Did I say Goonies instead of the Goons? I know the Goons. Of course I do. I mean, of course, Spike Milligan, Peter Sellers, Bill Oddie. I know them all. I am a British comedy fan. And if I said Goonies, it's because my brain is just falling apart. But that's okay. Isaac says, for the longest time, she thought I was English. Yeah, for the longest time, I thought I was English, too, until my parents explained to me and said, stop doing the stupid accent. You're just a California kid. Sarah, hello, hello. Good to have you, and Happy New Year to you, too. Emily, hello, hello. Good to have you. You're amazed you're getting to hear me. People who know me are amazed when I shut up. So enjoy the novelty while it's still a novelty. Who else? Ronnie. Ronnie says, I already said hello to Ronnie, didn't I? But anyway, Ronnie says, as we say in Scotland, if you dinna laugh, you'll greet. Greet meaning cry. Yes, actually I knew that. I knew that because I read Irvine Welsh. You'll greet. If you dinna laugh, you'll greet. Chris, hello. Chris, I already said hello to, but Chris is now saying hello to everybody else. Sandra says, Cornwall and Devon. Ah, good. I got him right. And hello. Xavier Esteberry. You'll have to tell me how to pronounce your name right, Xavier, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is that, by any chance, an Albanian name? Just wondering. Jessica, hello. A little late, but you made it. Indeed, you did, and I haven't even started reading yet, which is what I'm just about to do. So thank you all for joining me. It's a pleasure. I'm going to start reading right now. And because I don't 100% remember how much of this news section I started reading, except that we had Miriamel in the company of the extremely suspect monk Kadrak has escaped from under Joshua's watchful eye in Naglamund, and she is heading south, trying to convince the Nabanai, her mother's people, to support her uncle Joshua against her father, King Elias. What she doesn't know is they've already said they would do that, so her mission is essentially worthless from a political point of view. And they have stumbled on a battlefield where the Rimmersgard rebel Scully has attacked on Elias's behalf the Hernisteri, and they have found the horrible wreckage of that battle. And now Simon and his companions have left Naglamund, and they are on their way north. Remember, Miriamel's going south. Simon and his companions are going north in search of the semi-legendary sword Thorn, which once belonged to Sir Camarus. Anyway, so I'm going to start there again, even though I think I read some of that last time, at least from where my bookmark was. So thank you for your patience, and here we go. Let me get this bubble of air out of my esophagus first. Simon and his companions made their way slowly around the long circumference of the lake, along a peninsula of tall trees and drifting snow. On their left lay the frozen mirror of Drorsholm. The white shoulders of the upper Weldhelm loomed on the right. The song of the wind was loud enough to drown all conversation softer than a full shout. As Simon rode, watching Haystan's wide, dark back jounce along before him, it seemed they were all solitary islands in a cold sea, in constant sight of each other, but separated by untrafficked expanses. He found his thoughts turning inward, lulled by the monotonous pacing of his horse. Strangely, in his mind's in-looking eye, the Nagleman they had just left seemed as insubstantial as a distant memory of childhood. Even the faces of Miriamel and Josua were hard to recapture, as though he tried to summon the features of strangers whose importance had not been discovered until long after they were gone. Instead, he found vivid memories of the Hayholt, of long summer evenings in the commons yard, itchy with mown grass and insects, or of breezy spring afternoons climbing on the walls when the heady scent of the rose hedges in the courtyard pulled at him like warm hands. Remembering the slightly damp odor of the walls around his tiny cot, pushed into a corner in the servants' quarters, he felt himself a king in exile, as though he had lost a palace to some foreign usurper, as, in a way, he had. The others seemed just as enfolded in their own thoughts. But for Grimrick's whistling, a thin trill of music that only occasionally rose above the wind but seemed nevertheless constant, the trip around Drorsholm Lake was made in silence. Several times, when he could make her out through the fluttering snowflakes, he thought he saw Kantaka stop and tilt her head as though to listen. When they finally made camp that night, with the main body of the lake now lying behind them to the southwest, he asked Binnabic about it. "Does she hear something, Binnabic? Is there something ahead of us?" The troll shook his head, extending his now unmittened hands closer to the small fire. "Perhaps, but things that are before us, even in such weather, Kantaka smells them. It is into the wind that we are walking. More likely it is she hears a sound from behind or to either side." Simon thought about that for a moment. Certainly nothing had followed them from barren Holnir, devoid even of birds. "Someone is behind us?" he said. "I am doubting. Who, and for what reason?" Nevertheless, Sludig, bringing up the rear of the column, had also noticed the wolf's seeming uneasiness. Although he still was not entirely comfortable with Binnabic, and certainly was not ready to trust Kantaka, he rolled his sleeping cloak at the far side of camp when he slept. He did not doubt the gray wolf's keen senses. As the others sat eating hard bread and dried venison, he had taken out his whetstone to sharpen his hand axes. "Here between the Dimmerskog, the forest north of us, and Droshalven," Sludig said, frowning, "it has always been wild country, even when Isgrimner or his father ruled in Elvitsal and winter knew its place. These days, who knows what walks the White Waste or the Trollfells beyond?" He scraped rhythmically. "Trolls, for one thing," said Binnabic sardonically, "but I can be assuring you there is scant fear of troll folk descending upon us in the night for killing and plunder." Sludig grinned sourly and continued sharpening his axe. "The rumorsman speaks sense," Haystan said, giving Binnabic a displeased look. "And 'tis not trolls I'm fearing myself." "Are we near to your country, Binnabic?" Simon asked. "To Yukanuk?" "We will be approaching with more closeness when we reach the mountains. But the place of my birth is, in actuality, I think, east of where it is we are heading." "You think?" do not be forgetting. We are still not sure with exactness where we go. The Rhymer's Tree. A tree of rhymes? I know the mountain called Urmsheim, where it is supposed this Kolmund went, is standing somewhere to the north, between Rimmersgard and Ykanuk. But a big mountain it is. The troll shrugged. Is the tree on it, before it, or somewhere else altogether? I cannot know at this time. Simon and the others stared glumly into the fire. It was one thing to undertake a perilous mission for your sovereign. It was another thing to search blindly in the white wilderness. The flames hissed as they bit at the damp wood. Kantaka rose from where she stretched on the naked snow and cocked her head. She walked purposefully to the edge of the clearing they had chosen, in a grove of pines on the low hillside. After a suspenseful interval, she walked back and lay down again. No one said a word, but a moment of tension had passed, leaving their hearts a little lighter once more. When they had all finished eating, more logs were fed onto the blaze, which popped and steamed in cheerful spite of the flurrying snow. As Binnabik and Haystan talked quietly, and Simon used Ethelburn's whetstone on his own sword, a thin melody rose up. Simon turned to see Grimrick whistling, lips pursed, eyes fixed on the wavering flames. When he looked up and saw Simon staring at him, the wiry Erkenlander gave him a snaggletooth smile. "Put me in mind to something," he said. "An old winter song it was." "What then?" Ethelburn asked. "Sing it, man. No harm in quiet song." "Yes, go ahead," Simon seconded. Grimrick looked over to Haystan and the troll as if fearing an objection from that quarter, but they were still enmeshed in their discussion. "Well, then," he said, "suppose there's no harm in it." He cleared his throat and looked down, as if embarrassed by the sudden attention. "It's just a song my old father'd sing when we'd go out of a December afternoon to cut wood." He cleared his throat. "A winter song," he added, then cleared his throat again and sang in a scratchy but not untuneful voice. "Ice is a-growing in the thatch, and snow is upon the sill. Someone's a-knocking at the door out in the winter's chill." By the way, in case you can't tell, I'm just making up a tune as I'm going. I'm not even really trying to make one up. But somebody said the other day they'd rather have me sing them than read them, so I'm just giving it a shot. "Sing you hey-a-ho, and who can it be? Fire is a-burning in the grate, shadows is on the wall. Pretty Arda, she answers up inside her latch locked tall. Sing you hey-a-ho, and who can it be?" Comes then a voice from winter dark, "Open up your door. Let me in to share your fire and warm my hands before. Sing you hey-a-ho, and who can it be?" Arda, chaste and cherry maid, she answers, "Tell me, sir, oh, who can you be who walks abroad when not outside should stir? Oh, sing you hey-a-ho, and who can it be?" "A holy man," the voice replies, "who has not food nor shelter." The words all spoke so piteous, if she were ice 'twould melt her. Sing hey-a-ho, and who can it be? Then I will let you in, good father, old bones will soon be warmer. A maid can trust a man of God, that he will never harm her. Sing you hey-a-ho, and who can it be? Open the door, and who stands there? a man who's nothing holy. Old One Eye with his cloak and staff, and his wide-brimmed hat pulled lonely. I lied to get inside. Old One Eye grins and dances. The frost's my own, but I love to roam, and a maid is worth the chance. And holy Osiris, are you mad? Sludig leaped up, startling everybody. His eyes wide with horror, he made the sign of the tree broadly before him, as though to fend off a charging beast. Are you mad? He asked again, staring at the dumbfounded Grimrick. The Erkenlander looked around at his other companions, shrugging helplessly. What's wrong with this Rimmersman troll? He asked. Bennebic squinted up at Sludig, who was still standing. What is the wrongness, Sludig? We are none of us understanding. The Northerner looked around at the uncomprehending faces. Are you all without your senses? He asked. Do you not know of who you are singing? Oh, One Eye? Grimrick said, eyebrow cocked in puzzlement. It's just a song, Northman. Learned it from a father. That is Udun, One Eye you sing of. Udun Rimmer, the black old god of my people. We worshipped him in Rimmersgard when we were sunk in our heathen ignorance. Do not call up Udun Sky Father when you walk in his country, or he will come to your grief. Udun, the rhymer, Bennebic said wonderingly. If you don't believe in him any more, Simon asked, why are you afraid to speak of him? Sludig stared, his mouth still taut with worry. I did not say I did not believe in him. Adon, forgive me. I said we Rimmersmen no longer worship him. After a moment he lowered himself back to the ground. I am sure you think me foolish. Better that than we call down jealous old gods on ourselves. We are in his country now. It's just a song, Grimrick said defensively. I was not calling down anything. It's just a bloody song. Bennebic, is that why we call it Udun's Day? Simon began, then broke off when he saw the troll was not listening. Instead, the little man wore a broad, cheerful grin, as though he had just swallowed a draught of some pleasing liquor. That is it. Certainly, the little man said, and turned to pale, stern-faced Sludig. You have thought of it, my friend. What are you talking about? The blond-bearded Northman asked with some irritation. I do not understand you. What we are looking for, the place where Coleman was going, the Rhymer's tree. Except we were thinking rhyme, like poetry. But you have now said it. Udun Rimmer. Udun the Rhymer. Rhyme meaning frost. It is a Rhymer's tree we are searching for. Sludig retained his blank look for a moment, then slowly nodded his head. Blessed Elijah Troll, the Udun tree. Why did I not think of it? The Udun tree. You know the place Bennebic is talking about? Simon was slowly catching on. Of course. It is an old legend of ours. A tree entirely of ice. The old tales say that Udun made it grow so he could climb to the sky and make himself king over all the gods. But what good is legend to us? Simon heard Haystan ask, but even as the words came to his ears, he felt a strange, heavy chill folding around him like a blanket of sleet. The icy, white tree. He saw it again. The white trunk stretching up into the darkness. The impenetrable white tower, a great looming pale stripe against the blackness. It stood squarely in the track of his life, and somehow he knew there was no path around it, no way around the slender white finger, beckoning, warning, waiting. The white tree. Because the legend tells where it is, too, a voice said, echoing as if down a long corridor. Even if there is no such thing, we know that Sir Coleman must have gone where the legend points, the northern face of Ermsheim. Sludig is correct, someone said. Benebik said, we are needing only to go where Coleman was going with Thorn. Nothing else is having importance. The troll's voice seemed very far away. I think I have to go to sleep, Simon said, his tongue thick. He got up and stumbled away from the fire, practically unnoticed by the others, who were talking animatedly of riding distances and mountain travel. He curled up in his thick cloak and felt the snowy world revolve dizzyingly around him. He shut his eyes, and though he still felt every pitch and yaw, at the same time he began sliding heavily, helplessly down into dream-thick sleep. All the next day they continued along the forested bight of snow between the lake and the settling hills, hoping to make Hestad at the lake's northeastern tip by late afternoon. If its inhabitants had not fled the harsh winter and headed west, the companions decided, Sludig could go down by himself and restock some of their stores. Even if it lay deserted, they could perhaps take shelter in an abandoned hall for the night and dry out their things before the long trip across the waste. Thus, it was with some anticipation they traveled, making good time along the lake shore. Hestad, a village of some 24 longhouses, stood on a promontory of land scarcely wider than the town itself. Seen from the hillside above, the village seemed to sprout from the frozen lake. The cheering effect of their first glimpse lasted only about halfway down the sloping road into the vale. It became increasingly obvious that all the buildings stood, they were no more than burned-out shells. "Damn my eyes," Sludig said angrily. "This is not just a village abandoned, troll. They were driven out." "If they're lucky enough to get out at all," Hestan muttered. "I think I must be agreeing with you, Sludig," Benebik said. "Still, we must go and look there to see how recent this burning is." As they rode down to the bottom of the glen, Simon stared at the scorched remains of Hestad and could not help remembering the calcined skeleton of St. Hodoran's Abbey. The priest at the hayhold always used to say, "Fire purifies," he thought. If that's true, then why does burning frighten everyone? Well, by the Adon, I suppose no one wants to be purified that thoroughly. "Oh, no," Hestan said. Simon almost ran into him as the big guardsman reined up. "Oh, the good God," he added. Simon peered around him to see a line of dark shapes filing out of the trees near the village, moving slowly into the snowy road not 100 ells before them. Men on horseback. Simon counted them as they made their way out into the open. 7, 8, 9. They were all armored. The leader wore a black iron helm, shaped like a hound's head, showing the profile of the snarling muzzle as he turned to give orders. The 9 started forward. "That one, the dog-headed one." Sludig pulled his axes out and pointed at the approaching men. He is the one who led the ambush on us at Hodoran's. He is the one I owe for young Hove and the monks at the abbey." "Never will we take 'em," Hestan said calmly. "They'll carve us up. 9 men to 6, and 2 of us a troll and boy." Benebik said nothing, but calmly unscrewed his walking stick, which had been thrust beneath the cinch strap of Kantaka's saddle. As he reassembled it a matter of instants only, he said, "We must run." Sludig was already spurring his horse forward, but Hastan and Ethelburn reached him within a couple of paces and caught at his elbows. The Rimmersman, who had not even donned his helmet, tried to shake them off. He had a distant look in his blue eyes. "God damn it, man," Hastan said. "Come on. At least we've got a chance in among the trees." The leader of the approaching riders shouted something, and the others kicked their horses into a trot. White mist flurried up from the horses' hooves as though they ran on sea foam. "Turn him!" Hastan shouted to Ethelburn, grabbing the reins of Sludig's horse as he himself wheeled about. Ethelburn gave a smart smack with his sword hilt to the flank of the Rimmersman's mount, and they spun away from the oncoming riders, who were howling along at full gallop now behind them, waving axes and swords. Simon was trembling so that he feared he might fall from his saddle. "Benedict, where?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "The trees!" Benedict called back as Kantaka jumped forward. "Death it would be to climb back up the road. Ride, Simon, and stay to me, nearly." Now the horses of his companions were rearing and kicking on all sides as they headed off the wide path, away from the blackened ruins of Hathstad. Simon managed to slide his bow from where it hung over his shoulder, then leaned his head down over his horse's neck and dug in the spurs. With a bone-jarring surge, they were suddenly leaping over the snow and into the ever-thickening forest. Simon saw Benedict's small back and the bobbing gray of Kantaka's hindquarters as the trees loomed up dizzyingly on all sides. Shouts echoed from behind, and he looked back to see his other four companions in a close knot, with the dark mass of their pursuers beyond, fanning out through the forest. He heard a sound like the tearing of parchment, and for a brief moment saw an arrow quivering in a tree trunk just before him. The muffled drum fire of hoofbeats was everywhere, filling his ears even as he clung for his life to the pitching saddle. A whistling black thread was suddenly drawn out and snapped before his face, and then another. The pursuers were outflanking them, loosing their arrows almost broadside. Simon heard himself scream something at the plunging shapes flashing along beyond the nearer trees, and several more of the hissing darts snapped past. Clinging to his pommel, he reached the hand that held the bow back to draw an arrow from his jouncing quiver, but when he brought it forward, he saw it flash pale against his horse's shoulder. It was the white arrow. What should he do? In a split instant that seemed much longer, he pushed it back over his shoulder into the quiver, pulling out another. A mocking voice somewhere in his head laughed to see him picking and choosing arrows at such a moment. He almost lost bow and arrow both as his horse lurched around a snow-spattered tree that seemed to leap up in their path. A moment later, he heard a shout of pain and the terrifying scream of a fallen horse. He darted a look over his shoulder to see only 3 of his companions behind him and, farther behind every moment, a thrashing tangle of arms and kicking horse legs and roiling snow. The pursuers went over and around the downed rider, undeterred. Who was it? Was his brief, flickering thought. "Up the hill! The hill!" Benedict shouted hoarsely from somewhere to Simon's right. He saw the flag of Kantaka's tail as the wolf leaped up an incline into heavier trees, a thick clot of pines that stood like uncaring sentinels as the shouting chaos slashed past them. Simon yanked hard on his right-hand rein, having no idea if the horse would pay him any heed at all. A moment later, they canted to the side and bolted up the slope behind the bounding wolf. The other 3 companions rushed past him, pulling up their steaming horses within the sparse shelter of a crown of staff-straight trunks. Sludig still wore no helmet, and the thin one was surely Grimric, but the other man, bulky and helmeted, had gone a short way up the slope. Before Simon could turn to see who it was, he heard a hoarse shout of triumph. The riders were upon them. After a frozen moment, he nocked his arrow and lifted the bow, but the whooping attackers were moving in and out among the trees so quickly
that his shot flew harmlessly over the head of the nearest man and disappeared. Simon let fly a second arrow and thought he saw it strike the leg of one of the armored riders. Somebody shouted in pain. Sludig, with an answering howl, spurred his white horse forward, pulling his helm down over his head. Two of the attackers peeled off from the pack and angled toward him. Simon saw him duck the sword swipe of the first and, turning, crash his axe blade into the man's ribs as he swept past, bright blood rilling from the gash in the man's armor. As he turned from the first man, the second nearly caught him. Sludig had time only to deflect the man's swing with his other axe, but still took a clanging blow to the helmet. Simon saw the Rimmersman wobble and almost fall as the attacker wheeled around. Before they came together again, Simon heard an ear-piercing screech and pivoted to see another horse and rider stagger toward him, a troll-less Kantaka, teeth clinging to the man's unarmored leg, scrabbling with her claws at the shrilling horse's side. Simon pulled his sword from the scabbard, but as the rider struck helplessly at the wolf, his reeling steed plunged into Simon's own mount. Simon's blade spiraled away, then he, too, was briefly without weight or tether. A long instant later, the air was thumped from him as though by a giant's fist. He skidded to a face-down halt a short way from where his horse struggled with the other in a panicked, whinnying knot. Through a biting mask of snow, Simon saw Kantaka pull herself out from beneath the two horses and sprint away. The man, caught shrieking beneath, could not escape. Climbing painfully to his feet, spitting icy grit, Simon snatched at his bow and quiver lying nearby. He heard the sounds of combat move away up the hill and turned to follow on foot. Somebody laughed. Not 20 paces below him, seated astride a motionless gray horse, was the man in the black armor who wore the head of a ravening hound. A stark pyramidal shape was blazoned in white on his black jerkin. "There you are, boy," Dogface said, deep voice tolling inside his helmet. "I have been looking for you." Simon turned and dug up the snowy hill, stumbling, sinking into the knee-high drifts. The man in black laughed happily and followed. Picking himself up yet again, tasting his own blood from his torn nose and lip, Simon stopped at last, backed against a leaning spruce. He grabbed at an arrow and let the quiver drop, then knocked it and pulled back the bowstring. The man in black stopped, still half a dozen paces below, tilting his helmeted head to one side as if imitating the hound he resembled. "Now kill me, boy, if you can," he mocked. "Fire! Shoot!" He spurred his horse up the hill toward where Simon stood shivering. There was a hiss and a sharp, fleshy slap. Suddenly the gray horse was rearing up, mane flinging head thrown back, an arrow shuddering in its breast. The dog-faced rider was thrown down hard into the snow. He lay as if boneless, even as his twitching horse fell to its knees and rolled heavily onto him. Simon stared with fascination. A moment later he was staring with even more surprise at the bow he still held in his outstretched arm. The arrow had not left the string. "Haystan?" he said, turning to look up the slope. 3 figures stood there in a gap between the trees. They were none of them Haystan. They were none of them men. They had bright feline eyes, and their mouths were set in hard lines. The Scytha, who had shot the arrow, knocked another and lowered it until its delicately quivering head came to a halt, pointed at Simon's eyes. "Tsi im tsi sododaya," he said, his small, newly formed smile as cold as marble. "Blood, as you say, for blood." Chapter 37. Chiriki's Hunt. Simon stared helplessly at the black arrowhead, at the trio of thin faces. His jaw trembled. "Skay! Skay!" a voice cried. "Stop!" Two of the Scythi turned to look up the hill to their right, but the one coolly holding the bent bow never wavered. "Skay! Ras Zidaya!" the small figure shouted, and then, leaping forward, fell into a snow-churning roll, to stop at last in a flurry of gleaming powder, a few paces from Simon. Benedict got slowly to his knees, coated in snow as though he had been floured by a hurrying baker. "What?" Simon forced his numb lips to shape words, but the troll signaled him to silence with an urgent flutter of his squat fingers. "Shh! Slowly be putting down the bow you are holding. Slowly." As the boy followed this direction, Benedict spouted another rush of words in the unfamiliar language, waving his hands imploringly at the unblinking Scythi. "What? Where are the others?" Simon whispered, but Benedict silenced him again, this time with a small but violent headshake. "No time is there. No time. For your life we are fighting." The troll raised his own hands in the air, and Simon, having dropped the bow, did the same, turning his palms outward. "You have not, I am hoping, lost the white arrow?" I don't know. Daughter of the mountains, I must hope not. Slowly drop your quiver. There." He sputtered out a little bit more of what Simon took to be Scythi tongue, then kicked at the quiver so that the arrows scattered across the broken snow like dark jackstraws. All but one. Only its triangular tip, pearl blue like a liquid drop of sky, stood out against the surrounding whiteness. "Oh, praise to the high places," Benedict sighed. "Staja ame ine," he called to the Scythi, who watched like cats whose avian quarry has chosen to turn and sing instead of fly away. "The white arrow. You cannot be in ignorance of this. Imcheist sikiosu Diana olingit." "This is rare," the Scytha with the bow said, lowering it slightly. His accent was odd, but his command of the Western speech very good. He blinked. "To be taught the rules of song by a troll." His cold smile returned briefly. "You may spare us your exhortations and your crude translations. Pick up your arrow and bring it here to me." He hissed a few words to the other two as Benedict bent to the quiver. They looked back once more at Simon and the troll, then dashed up the hill with startling speed, seeming to barely dimple the snow as they went, so quick and light were their steps. The one remaining behind kept his arrow trained in Simon's general direction as Benedict went trudging forward. "Hand it toward me," the Scytha directed. "Feathers first, troll. Now step back toward your companion." He eased up on the bow to examine the slender white object, allowing the arrow to slide forward until the string was almost slack and he could hold the nocked arrow and bow stave in one hand. Simon was aware for the first time of the shallow rasp of his own rapid breathing. He lowered his shaking hands a bit as Benedict crunched to a halt nearby. "It was given to this young man for a service he was rendering," Benedict said defiantly. The Scytha looked up at him and cocked a slanting eyebrow. He seemed, at Simon's first glance, much like the first one of his kindred Simon had seen, the same high-boned cheeks and strange bird-like movements. He was dressed in breeks and jacket of shimmery white cloth, dotted at shoulder sleeves and waist with slender dark green scales. His hair, almost black but also with a strange greenish tinge, he wore in two complicated braids, one falling before each ear. Boots, belt, and quiver were of soft, milk-hued leather. Simon realized that it was only the Scytha's position upslope and silhouetted against the drab sky that allowed him to be clearly seen. If the fair one were to stand against the snow, in a copse of trees he would be as invisible as the wind. "Yee-see-see-ye," the Scytha muttered feelingly, and turned to hold the arrow to the shrouded sun. Lowering it, he stared wonderingly at Simon for a moment, then narrowed his eyes. "Where did you find this, Sudodaya?" he asked harshly. "How did one such as you come by such a thing?" "It was given to me," Simon said, color coming back into his cheeks and strength to his voice. He knew what he knew. "I saved one of your people. He shot it at a tree, then ran away." The Scytha again looked him over carefully and seemed about to say something more. Instead, he turned his attention up the hillside. A bird whistled a long, complex call, or so Simon thought at first, until he saw the small movements of the white-clad Scytha's lips. He waited still as a statue until there came an answering trill. "Go now, before me," he said, swinging around to gesture with his bow at the troll and boy. They walked with difficulty up the steep slope, their captor moving lightly behind them, slowly turning the white arrow over and over in his slender fingers. Within the space of a few hundred heartbeats, they reached the rounded top of the knoll and started down the other side. There, 4 Scythi crouched around a tree-trimmed, snow-blanketed gully. The 2 Simon had already seen, recognizable only by the bluish tint to their braided hair, and another pair whose tresses were smoky gray, although, like the others, their golden faces were unwrinkled. At the gully's bottom, beneath the menacing quadrangle of Scythi arrows, sat Hastan, Grimric, and Sludig. They were each one bloodied and wore the hopelessly defiant expressions of cornered animals. "Bones of St. Ilstan," Hastan swore when he saw the new arrivals. "Ah, God, boy, was hoping you got away." He shook his head. "Still better than being a dead un, I suppose." "Do you see, troll?" Sludig said bitterly, his bearded face smeared with red. "Do you see what we have called on ourselves? Demons! We should never have mocked that dark one." The Scytha who held the arrow, seemingly the leader, said a few words in his language to the others and gestured for Simon's companions to climb from the pit. "Demons they are not," Benedict said as he and Simon braced their legs to help the others scramble up, a difficult task on the shifting snow. "They are Scythi, and they will do us no harm. It is, after all is said, their own white arrow that is compelling them." The Scythi's leader gave the troll a sour look, but said nothing. Grimric came gasping up onto the level ground. "Scythi?" he said, struggling for breath. A cut just below his scalp had painted his forehead with a solid swath of crimson. "Now we've gone walking into old stories, and that's sure. Scythi folk, may Osiris the Aeon protect us all." He made the sign of the tree and wearily turned to help the staggering Sludig. "What happened?" Simon asked. How did you... What happened to...
"The ones who pursued us are dead," Sludig said, sagging back against a tree trunk.
His byrnie was slashed in several places, and his helmet, which dangled from his hand, was scraped and dented like an old pot.
"We did for some ourselves. The rest,"
he flapped a limp hand at the Scythi guards,
"fell with bodies full of arrows. They'd have shot us too, sure, if the troll hadn't spoken in their tongue," Hastan said. He smiled faintly at Benedict. We did nothing bad. We did nothing bad of you when you ran. Praying for you, we were.
I'm going to be reading for about another minute and a half or so to get to the end of this section.
I went for finding Simon. He is my charge,
Benedict said simply. But Simon looked around, hoping against hope, but saw no other prisoner.
Then that was Ethelbern who fell before we reached the first hill.
Haystan nodded slowly.
'Twas. Damn their souls, Grimrick swore. They were Rimmersmen. They were murdering bastards.
Scallies, Sludig said, eyes hard. The Scythy began making gestures for them to get up.
2 of them bore the Kolskike Raven,
he continued, rising.
Oh, how I am praying to catch him with nothing between us but our axes.
You are waiting with a host of many others, Benedict said.
Wait!
Simon felt terribly hollow. This was not right. He turned to the leader of the Scythy company.
You have been looking at my arrow. You know my story is true.
You cannot take us anywhere or do anything until we see what has happened to our companion. The Scytha looked at him appraisingly. I do not know your story is true, man-child, but we will find out soon enough, sooner than you might wish. As to the other, he took a moment to survey Simon's ragged party. Very well, we shall allow you to see your other man. He spoke to his comrades, and they followed the men down the hill. The quiet company passed the arrow-plumed corpses of 2 of their attackers, eyes wide and mouths agape. Snow was already sifting back over their still forms, covering the scarlet stains. They found Ethelbern 100 ells from the lake road. The broken shaft of an ashwood arrow stood out from the side of his neck below his beard, and his splayed, twisted posture told that his horse had rolled over him in its death throes.
He was no longer dying,
Haystan said, tears standing in his eyes.
Aidan be praised 'twas quick.
They dug a hole for him as best they could, hacking at the hard ground with swords and axes. The Scythies stood by, unconcerned as geese. The companions wrapped Ethelbern in his thick cloak and lowered him into the shallow grave. When he was covered over, Simon pushed the dead man's sword into the earth as a marker.
Take his helmet,
Haystan said to Sludig, and Grimrick nodded.
I'd not wanted it to go unused,
the other Erkenlander agreed. Sludig hung his own ruined helm on the pommel of Ethelbern's sword before taking the one held out to him.
We will avenge you, man,
the Rimmersgarder promised.
Blood for blood.
Silence settled over them. Snow filtered down through the trees as they stood regarding the patch of naked ground. Soon it would all be white again.
Come,
the Scytha chief said at last.
We have waited for you long enough. There is someone who will want to see this arrow.
Simon was last to move. I scarcely had time to know you, Ethelbern, he thought. But you had a good, loud laugh. I will remember that. They turned and headed back into the cold hills. And that's where we're hanging it up for the night, partway into chapter 37. So with that, I say thank you so much for joining me, everybody, and all of you nice folks for, okay. Xavier tells me that, okay, so that must be a Basque name then. Very cool. Okay, so who else? Sarah showed up, and Jessica showed up, and Rosalba showed up. Anyway, thank you all so much for being with me. I'll be back at 7 p.m. to read some more from here on. But if you are not joining me for that, but maybe listening online instead or whatever, I will see you next week at the same time when I come back, because I don't see anything ahead of me now for a while to interfere with readings. So I think we'll have a chance to finish the book. Not next time, but I mean over the next weeks. So again, take good care of yourselves. That's the most important thing. And when you're doing that, that enables you to take care of others, the people you love, the people around you, anybody who needs help. And with that, I say once more, what a pleasure it is to have you joining me, and how nice it is to be back with you after several weeks of madness and holidays and barking dogs and sleepy cats. Anyway, so good night. Thank you again. See you very soon. Peace.